Welcome back to Hoops HD. This is our Under the Radar podcast. Welcome, everybody. I'm your host,
Woo-hoo.
Chad Sherwood, joined with a different cast than normal. Anybody that was watching games tonight knows that ESPN did the switch up, had their NBA announcers doing college games, college announcers doing NBA games. So we're switching things up here at Hoops HD. We're having our normal Monday night crew on for Under the Radar, just like we
Yes.
this week had our Under the Radar crew on for Monday night.
Yeah, a complete switch. And again, it's just nice to be doing something a little different for a change.
But I am your host, Chad Sherwood. Down there, we've got Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org, John Stalika, David Griggs, and the other switch up we're doing. David, you and John have switched boxes. You're normally in the other boxes on the
I
screen.
don't know anything about that. I'm just wherever I am.
Okay. Lots of switch ups here. All right.
Yep, and in another twist of fate, I'm the one that's going to be live from the Puppet Bunker tonight.
I'm not.
Oh.
We're not. We're never doing the puppet bunker again. That's just, we're scrapping that.
The Puppet Bunker. Stalika, what is the Puppet Bunker for people that don't know?
Well, the Puppet Bunker was something that we introduced during Championship Week last year.
We're
It's
not doing
similar
it this
to the Bracket Bunker that ESPN's Joe Lunardi does
Well,
during
he does.
that
No, he's
Championship
not actually.
Week.
It. What the hell is that? No, we're not doing the puppet. Joe Lunardi is not in an actual bunker. He's actually in a studio. He can walk around. He sleeps at home. You don't just lock him in a damn bunker.
There it is, David. 10 days, 23 hours, 38 minutes, and 52 seconds.
We're not doing the puppet bunker.
Puppet Bunker, and Championship Week begins.
No, we're not doing that this year.
On Lexington Fayette time. I didn't realize UK had their own time zone now.
They got crazy crap there.
This is our Under the Radar podcast. David, why don't you tell everybody that doesn't know what it means to be under the radar?
Well, there's two qualifiers. One is that you're not in the top 25 of the human polls, which no one from the non-multi-bid leagues has been in seemingly 30 years. It hasn't been that long, but it seems like it is. And the other is that you're not in a regular multi-bid conference. Now, again, a league like the A10 and the Mountain West might only get one or two teams in this year, maybe only one, but those are regular conferences that regularly get their first place team inside the bubble and send more than just one team. The other leagues that do that are the American, the West Coast, and the Big East, and of course the five power conferences, which is the ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and Pac-12. And don't bomb me on Twitter. Power conference doesn't mean that it's better or worse than the Big East. It means it's a political power autonomy thing. They can legislate rules without the rest of the NCAA, whereas the Big East cannot. That's what power means.
Well, we do have 22 conferences that we review in this show, and we like to start out with a feature conference. And tonight's feature conference is one of our favorite conferes. We cannot get through a season without featuring them once per year at least. Maybe next year we'll feature them every week. The Northeast Conference, where Rocco, let me start off with you on the NEC, where Wagner had been cruising until this weekend.
Yeah, and that came to a screeching halt, that 7-game winning streak at Fairleigh Dickinson. The Knights clipped Wagner. Actually, they had a huge lead in that game, and Wagner rallied to make it interesting, but in the end, FDU held them off. But Wagner's still the story of the conference. I mean, we're used to this league coming down to the last couple, probably usually the last game, and decided, what we're going to have 1 through 8 seed-wise. But Wagner's 11-3 in the league. They're 1 win away from clinching a quarterfinal round home game. And then, that would be their 3rd straight year with a home game. So not only are they having a great year, but they're building a great program. And also the Seahawks are one of only 15 teams left that have not lost a game on their home court. So them getting that home court advantage will be huge for them making it to the NCAAs.
Yeah, that game against Fairleigh Dickinson surprised me because if you watched it, I know that they made it respectable, but they were just getting blown out of the place on Sunday. And this is a Wagner team that had looked really, really good all the way, even in November and December, a lot better than what we're used to seeing a team from this league look. And some real excitement coming up. I mean, Rocco mentioned that Wagner's on the verge. I think with 4 games to go, they have a 2-game lead, so they're getting really close to clinching that. But this isn't this is at campus sites all throughout. When you look at seeds 2 through 7, a lot up for grabs there and a lot at stake because home court advantage is a big deal.
Yeah, and even a bigger deal here coming up tomorrow night, round 1 of the Battle of Brooklyn. They still have to play one more time next week as well. Back-to-back weeks. They're going to play late in the season. But not only one of our favorite rivalries here between LIU and St. Francis, 2 teams, I think about a mile apart there in Brooklyn. On top of that, they're both 2 of these 4 teams that are tied at 8 and 6 in that logjam for third place. So. Not a good chance that these 2 teams could meet again in the NEC first round as well.
Right. Oh, how fun would that one be? They've met in the tournament before, and it is a show. One of our favorite under-the-radar last week was Rivalry Week, if that's even still a thing. This is one of the better under-the-radar rivalries. Maybe one of our favorites.
Well, Stalika, on this conference here, the Northeast Conference, do you think that anybody can knock off Wagner when we do get to that conference tournament, or do you think that that maybe this was just kind of, hey, get that loss out of the way here last weekend, and now we're just going to cruise the rest of the way?
I would say Mount St. Mary's is one team that's capable of knocking Wagner off. Of course, the other surprise coming from the Mountaineers was they actually lost on the road to Bryant, which mathematically keeps Bryant alive. But another team I would keep an eye on that could possibly knock off Wagner would be STFU, a.k.a. St. Francis, PA. Let's not forget, this team also beat Wagner on a buzzer beater at Wagner last year during the NEC tournament.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah, Rocco, you got
Yeah, don't forget the last game of the season, the regular season, is Wagner takes a trip to Mount St. Mary's. So if Mount St. Mary's can get within one game, that's going to be for all the marbles.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of cruising, God dang. Xavier's up 20, not under the radar, but speaking of cruising.
Okay. Next up, the Big East Conference, apparently. Oh, no, the America East Conference.
Yeah, the America East, yeah.
Now, talk about cruising. Vermont, out there now to an 11-0 record. Stalika just absolutely dominating this conference. Had a close game in Albany, but that was their last real test for the season, I think.
I believe that was a game where they actually got down as many as 17 early in the first half before mounting a late comeback. So now it seems to be just a matter of time for the Catamounts to at least clinch top seed in the America East. But
actually, that was the Lowell game where they fell down big early, but they had a 5 or 6 point lead by halftime, and it was.
Well, it was both games, actually.
It was both.
Yeah, they fell behind in both and had to come back to win. UMBC, the next team, but Vermont has not lost a conference game since 1984, I think it was. And, cruising all the way through. They're probably going to win out. And let me ask you this if I can, not to hijack the hosting duties to do exactly that. What line does Vermont end up on, and how dangerous are they?
I'll tell you that, in my opinion, I think they've got an outside shot, should they win out, of even sneaking into that 12 line. But I think they're a solid 13 seed right now.
Yeah.
And that's about where they wound up last year, I think, when they faced Purdue in round 1.
Yeah, I think they were on the 13.
And that 12 line would require somebody that we're projecting there, like a Loyola, Chicago, or Middle Tennessee, something like that, to lose and not get an at-large bid. I mean, that's right. Kind of where I'm looking at that for the 12 line.
Exactly.
Rocco, Vermont's not the only undefeated team left. Florida Gulf Coast, the A-Sun, also 11-0, and closing in on that perfect conference season. Already locked up home court throughout the A-Sun tournament.
Yeah, so Florida Gulf Coast officially clinched over the last week, and now they are tasked with the duty of trying to become the first Atlantic Sun team since 1996-97. College of Charleston, who actually went 16-0 to pull that feat off. And Gulf Coast themselves has won 15 straight A-Sun games, and ironically, their last loss was a home loss to Lipscomb, which is our feature matchup in this league coming up on Saturday.
And that 97 team, College of Charleston, did end up beating Maryland in the first round of the NCAA tournament that year as well.
That's right. Even called the A. That is some trivia for you. But do you know what this was called before it was the A-Sun?
The Trans-America Conference.
Trans-American Conference. The TAC.
Old TAC days. We're getting a little TAC here, but Rocco already mentioned it. The big game for the week is Gulf Coast hosting Lipscomb. They host Kennesaw before that, and I don't know that Al Skinner's team has much of a shot against them, though.
Yeah, Jacksonville got swept last week, which really hurt their chances to get second. We know that this is a home court advantage league for the conference tournament, so the race for second place is very important. Now Lipscomb, I think they have the tiebreaker over Jacksonville, so even if they lose to Gulf Coast, I think they're still in good shape to get the number 2 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there they are, and then we do have a nice battle there for even for the fourth spot there. Who's going to host that game in JIT, North Florida, Kennesaw?
I'm a little sad because, we'll get into this like for the championship week video notebook when I won't be in the puppet bunker. But the quad screens are gone, so you can't just get all 4 opening round quarterfinal games on the same screen anymore.
You can if you play around with your computer a little bit, but you have to have 4 extra boxes open. I can do it. But anyhow, David, Big Sky, another undefeated team here with Montana now 13-0 in conference play, and just kind of, I guess they had a tough game with Sacramento State, pulled that one out, rolled over a very disappointing Portland State.
Yeah, Portland State was a team I really liked in November and December. I thought that they were going to make a lot more noise than what they have, but Montana, and again, coming in, they were 8-5 coming in the conference play, which is decent, but they weren't one of the teams I was really excited about. I know I say that every week, but they have just rolled over this league, and clearly the best team, clearly the most deserving team, and you want to see that. You want to see the team with the best shot at doing well in the tournament get the bid, and I hope it's them.
Well, Rocco, this is one team that I think may not get that perfect conference season, unlike the last 2 conferences we discussed, because of those 2 games that Sleeka just highlighted for us this week. Real tough week for the guys.
That's a really tough road trip too, and I agree. I think percentage-wise, they're certainly looking at losing one of the 2. It'd be really impressive that they get another sweep. They swept a couple of the other tough road trips. I know that Weber State one they swept, so don't count them out. And, fun fact about Montana, the last team they lost to was my Washington Huskies back on December 22nd. So pretty crazy to think that was their last loss. That game came down to the wire as well. So.
And I also highlight these 2 games for Weber State because if for whatever reason Montana does get swept on their roadie at Idaho and Eastern Washington, Weber has a very good chance of sneaking back into the top spot with the Portland-Sacramento roadie coming up.
Yeah, John, and they do, but Weber State's actually got the toughest remaining schedule. They have 4 road games, and it's a little easier this week, but they have a really tough trip to finish.
Well, John, here's the Big South standings where we're seeing kind of rarity here. We're actually seeing a couple of teams starting to pull away, and we're seeing normal-ish looking standings as opposed to log jams that we normally see at the top of this conference.
Radford, it was nice knowing you, but it's good to see a couple familiar folks in UNC and Winthrop reasserting themselves atop the standings here.
Just a shout out to Pat Kelsey at Winthrop. I don't think that much was expected of them this year, but they're not rolling over the league like they have in recent years, but for all the turnover that they had, and they've improved a lot as the year's gone on, and they're suddenly dangerous. And a lot has to happen, but they still have an outside shot of getting that home court advantage.
They do, and Rocco, it's going to be could be a very busy year, though, conference tournament-wise in Asheville this year with the SoCon tournament down there and possibly UNC Asheville hosting the Big South tournament at the same time.
Yeah, it looks like that's what's going to happen at this point. But I know Asheville it hasn't exactly been dominant. They had the game against Radford on I think it was either Sunday or Saturday, but they had to hit a 3 with 4 seconds left, and then Radford actually had an open three to win it, and it just rimmed off. So
yeah,
that
it was
could have gone
great.
either way. And poor Radford, their game before, I think it was Thursday, they got a shot blocked at the buzzer again to lose at High Point. So Radford could have easily won both those games, and so they go from being at the top to out of the contention with 2 heartbreakers.
Well, I'll tell you, if you do want to see college basketball next couple of weeks, in about a couple of weeks to see conference tournaments, Asheville's definitely a great place to go for it. Absolutely great area there. And John probably wants to talk about Longwood at Winthrop, but we're not going to.
John, why in the hell are you circling that game?
That's my new favorite rivalry game that Chad introduced a couple weeks ago, the Wynwood Classic.
oh, we're doing it again. We're doing it again. All right.
Oh, God. All right. Well, we're going to go over to the Big West Conference.
And look, how about that Santa Davis Cup that we had this week?
Well, we just had this week round 2 of the Rivervine Cup with Irvine winning at Riverside 62-52. But we really get to go this way again.
We're doing it again. I'm so happy.
David, Santa Barbara.
No one is watching anymore, but we're doing it again.
David, UCSB, half a game up first place there.
Yeah, and I still think that overall they look like the best team. UC Davis has lost some games that you would have kind of expected them to win, or at least I think you would have expected them to. But I think Santa Barbara is the best team in the conference, and it's starting to show a little bit.
And Rocco, Irvine kind of came out of nowhere to suddenly be in second place. We've been talking about Long Beach, Hawaii. I don't think we really discussed Irvine much at all this year.
Yeah, Irvine's been hot lately, and it all started with that black and blue road win at Long Beach State that was featured on HoopsHD a couple weeks ago. And there's still a lot of basketball left. There's 5 teams still in the hunt. Unfortunately, Hawaii has lost 5 straight, and they're out of it now, including a really surprising home loss to Northridge over the weekend. But UCSB, it's been an amazing turnaround. They were 6-22 last year, and this is Joe Pasternak's first year. Maybe his only year at UCSB if they keep winning like this. It's been really impressive to go from 6-22 to probably going way above 20 wins this year. And David's right. UC Davis really surprised. They came into last week undefeated at home and lost 2 home games to both UCSB and Cal State Fullerton and knocked themselves out of a position to run away with the lead. So what a fun year for this league.
Yeah. And tough week coming up for UCSB, though, at Long Beach and then hosting Davis. So I wouldn't be surprised if Irvine, with a much easier week, ends up in first place come next week.
Right. Yeah, that could definitely see that happening.
David, the Mumps Conference, a.k.a. the Colonial.
Still the most ridiculous thing I've heard in years.
James Madison back playing again. They played one of their, you see the 2 0-0 games there at the bottom. Those are the ones that were canceled. But they played their 2 makeup games against UNC Wilmington. They're going to make up the other Elon game on the I think about the final Monday in February is my understanding. But Charleston, red hot though.
Yeah, and I think this Charleston team has a very high ceiling. They were a team that hasn't done bad at all this year. Earl Grant, has done a fantastic job with this program. But as good as they've been this year, I think, I was, and I think you were too, we're expecting them to be even better. And because they didn't look as good as we thought they would be right out of the gate, we kind of stopped paying as much attention to them. But it's still the same team that we thought would be good in November, and they still can be. And the conference tournament is in Charleston, so they should have the advantage. And again, how dangerous can they really be if they get to the NCAA tournament?
But by the same token, Northeastern is still putting some pressure on Charleston, especially with the win at Towson earlier in the week.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got here this week, Charleston's going to be at James Madison, at Wilmington.
The newly vaccinated James Madison basketball.
Yes, Northeastern hosting Drexel and William and Mary. So, we'll see where things stand come next week as well. But let's go over to Conference USA. Rocco, did we lose you or are you back here?
I'm back. Thanks
Okay.
for bearing with me there.
All right, no problem. But we got Rocco back, and Rocco, we saw I guess nothing much really happened in Conference USA this past week. Everybody just kind of kept winning.
I thought North Texas was impressive. I've liked this team all year. They won at UAB, and they battled Middle Tennessee tough on Saturday. They've got a winning record in the league, so really good story. There's a lot of good stories in this league. It's Old Dominion has got to be the least talked about two-loss league team in any league. And it's mainly because they just haven't knocked off either of the more popular teams, Middle and Western Kentucky. So Old Dominion still with a remaining schedule that allows them to win 6 more games. Probably 5 of them won't be talked about, and the only one that would be at WKU. But they've literally lost to nobody that they've never really been upset. So really interesting season they've had.
Yeah, to touch on Rocco's point, he won't get any Coach of the Year votes because of the big 3 at the top, but Grant McCaslin in his first year at North Texas certainly has to be commended for the job he's done so far.
Yeah, and they got the conference tournament coming down to their neck of the woods this year.
Yes. Dangerous team.
Yeah.
Dangerous team. I also think Old Dominion to be dangerous. But David, there's the upcoming schedule of Conference USA, and I think we have if we're talking about any of these games next week, it's because we saw a major upset.
Yeah, again, I mean, I know we just got through praising North Texas, but still Western Kentucky should go there and win. But again, this
we'll see.
Paso Shar Cup that we got coming up Thursday night, the Paso big conference tournament implications there. The battle for 12th place.
David, why don't we talk about the Horizon League instead, where Northern Kentucky now has a 1-game lead over Wright State after they suffered a surprising home loss to Milwaukee.
Yeah, Wright State was cruising, and I mean looking really, really good. And then what have they lost 3 out of 4 now? And once you can kind of understand, it's just a hiccup. But what the hell has happened to them? Anyway, but yeah, Northern Kentucky back out in front, and you wish it meant something like it used to, but it really doesn't.
And Rocco, last week we were talking about this Illinois-Chicago team still getting red hot, making a run towards the top of the standings. They lose at home to Cleveland State.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and Cleveland State also knocked off Wright State. So I don't know. Maybe Cleveland State can be last year's Milwaukee and get all the way to the conference final. But who knows? This league is so upside down. Once you think you've got it figured out, somebody on the bottom is going to beat somebody on the top.
Yeah, and outside of Greg Campy, we also forget that Cleveland State also has an experienced coach at the helm, and Dennis Felton.
Yeah, Dennis Felton, really like him. He's I mean, he'll get it going there. But what do you think? How do you like Cleveland State and Detroit's chances of winning the conference tournament based on how things have been going?
I'll tell you, if it's like last year, they have very good chances. Remember the 10th seed in the final last year, so hey, I mean, Oakland is a team that I still think has the talent, but they lost at a buzzer beater tonight to Youngstown State.
Wow.
Oof.
Yikes.
Yeah, really bizarre season in the Horizon. But again, like the front runner is who we thought it would be, although maybe not exactly the storyline that we thought would get there. But it's Northern Kentucky.
And I'd like the Illinois-Chicago team though. That would be a pretty cool story if they made it. I think I'm gonna like the story no matter who wins this league.
Yeah.
Yeah, and John, you got circled there coming Friday night, maybe the game of the season, there's the regular season in the Horizon, the Norse Wright Cup.
Yeah, the Norse Wright. Yeah. And
then, this rivalry also goes back to their Division II days when both Wright State and NKU had started in the 60s and 70s and were facing each other. They had a brief interruption when Wright State transitioned up in the 80s, but this one will be on ESPNU for Friday nights for all but the regular season title.
Yeah, right after the Rhode Island game, I believe.
Yep.
The weekly Rhode Island game. Rocco, the Ivy League, Harvard knocked off Penn, and that really kind of shocked me. I did not see that one coming, despite the fact that the game was at Harvard. I just thought Penn was a lot better than anybody else in this conference.
Yeah, and that was the night after Penn barely escaped Dartmouth, and so it was a rough two back-to-back days for Penn. They're lucky to just get a win out of that. But Harvard had a really great weekend. They controlled Princeton the whole way, and I think they controlled most of that Penn game. So now Harvard's playing well. We all thought they'd probably be the champion or close to the champion before the year. So they've really finally started righting the ship. But I still think the league's pretty wide open, and it's really interesting to see who's going to take those last two spots in the Palestra.
Yeah, you look at what Princeton did. It got blown out by Dartmouth, who was for their first conference win over the weekend. That was
Dartmouth was fired up last week.
Well, Dartmouth should have had two because they actually led Penn for much of that one.
The upcoming schedule here, Penn has got the Cornell-Columbia road trip, while Harvard is hosting Brown and Yale. I guess maybe the Yale-Harvard game is the one to circle this week.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, again, you got to kind of watch Penn and Harvard the rest of the way. So.
Yeah, and Princeton's got to go back on the road against the other 2, 3, and 5 teams. So even though we all think, or probably think that Princeton's one of the top 4 teams, if they slip up some more this week, they're going to be in real trouble.
Yeah, they will be.
Metro Atlantic, David, you are all on the Rider bandwagon, correct?
I like them a little bit, yeah. I mean, compared to the rest of the conference, I like them a lot. Canisius hanging in tough, though. But Rider, I mean, they've looked the best all year long, I've thought. And, God, Monmouth, although picking it up a little bit, King Rice, they are improving as the year goes along. But, we're used to seeing them at the top of the standings. They're not this year, so this is probably the year they get to the NCAA tournament via a ridiculous run through the conference tournament.
Yeah, and it's going to be a tough battle the rest of the way here to see who wins that 1 seed and gets to wear the white jerseys when they go to Albany.
Right.
For the conference.
But yeah, and again, as Rocco pointed out in the stat here, Canisius did win the first game between them and Rider, so they're, I guess, sort of on top right now. But all in all, I've just liked this Rider team. Yeah.
You probably would have had a nice photo bomb if you were watching the end of the post-game interview between Monmouth and Iona, where King Rice was being interviewed, and it looked like in the background Tim Cluse and his star player had to be separated from each other. So bit of tension in that one, but Iona did rebound the following couple days later.
I'll tell you what, though, John, if you want to talk about great post-game interviews in the Metro Atlantic.
We should have queued this up. Please, Jimmy Patso.
We should have it queued up. But the sideline reporter goes to interview him about the game that they just won. He takes the microphone and does an interview with his own player. It's classic. You got to look it up. It's one of our favorite coaches by far. Rocco, coming up Sunday, Canisius at Rider, round 2.
Can't wait. Yeah, the first game was 77-76. I forget how it ended, but obviously they're very competitive with each other. And this will be a big chance for Rider to take control. They're at home. They'll be favored to do it. The way it's shaping up, though, right now, Chad, I actually think this is shaping up to another one of those Iona MAC tournament runs from like the 3 or 4 seed spot.
I could see it happening. You can't count out Tim Cluse in the Metro Atlantic tournament.
Right.
No way.
John, the Mid-American Conference, where we now have Buffalo and Toledo both with the same overall record after Buffalo kind of a surprising loss to Northern Illinois this past week.
Yep, that one took extra time, but all it did was delayed the inevitable, and NIU actually got a pretty notable upset. And Toledo, they were able to survive a possible upset bid against Miami on the road Friday night, but they also ended up holding serve. And now there's actually going to be a nice race between Buffalo and Toledo for the regular season title. Unfortunately, they only had one regular season matchup, which Buffalo won. So if Toledo wants the 1 seed in Cleveland, they're going to have to win outright.
And did you say, Chad, I know I should know this, the ladder's gone. It's just 4 rounds of standard seeding, right?
Yeah, in fact, the ladder's been going for about 2 or 3 years in the Mid-American, but
No,
we weren't
no, it
paying
hasn't.
attention.
No. You're wrong.
Buffalo hosting Bowling Green and at Miami this week. Toledo's at Ball State and at Eastern Michigan. So tough games for both of them there. Some good road tests, so we'll see what happens. But Rocco, the MEAC, with the eligible Savannah State Tigers. Now 2 games up over A&T, who was playing without their best player for a couple games, including their loss to Savannah State. But 2-game lead now for those Tigers.
I got a chance to see the show on Monday, and I am with the puppet. Save the Tigers.
Yes,
this is awesome.
Tigers.
And every game they seem to be at 100 points with like 5 minutes left. So it's not like it's boring to watch them. So I think this is a team not only for the, save the program at the D1 level, the rallying cry, but also just because how fun would it be if they go to Dayton and win their playing game and then, try to play Virginia with like,
oh my God,
try to score points.
Oh.
Could be a lot of entertainment value from the Tigers.
Yes, and what is happening at Savannah State is just flat out ridiculous. Everything about it, from being basically pressured to move down to Div 1 when they clearly shouldn't have to getting off to the rough start to now being a first-place team. We've watched the last couple of games, and I mean, how about this? I mean, that arena is pretty rocking, and they've got fans in it now. Wouldn't you say? I mean,
yeah, no, they're definitely generating some excitement. They've got 2 road games this week, tough road tests actually, at Norfolk State, at Hampton. I guess the other 2 games we've got to circle this upcoming week, though, is Delaware State, a pair of home games against Florida A&M and Coppin State. If they're going to finally get that first D1 win, this might be the week for the Hornets to do that also.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I also want to keep an eye on Bethune-Cookman because while A&T and Savannah have gotten all the headlines,
wow.
Sorry, Bethune just got buzzed. It's Savannah State, save the Tigers.
Yeah.
Slika.
Oh, Chad, I was just going to throw out there Saturday, Savannah State's going to Norfolk State, which is going to be great. Hopefully they're getting there early, spending some time and getting comfortable in Norfolk because that's where they're going to need to be when they cut down the nets on March 10th to win the meet.
If they're playing in Dayton, we're going.
I'll see you there.
Here's the Missouri Valley John, the Missouri Valley Conference, I would note that Loyola Chicago did beat Valpo tonight. That result is not yet on the screen there, but now 12-3 in conference, 22-5 overall. Starting to roll, aren't they?
Yep, they're starting to roll and actually gained a little bit of separation because Southern Illinois also lost to upstate foe Illinois State over the week, so now have a 2-game lead in the standings here.
Yeah, Southern Illinois also with a win tonight. They snuck by Missouri State by a single point tonight, so that's not on the screen either. So they're now 10-5.
Yeah, good job for Barry Henson's. One of our favorite. I mean, him and Patsos. What can be done to arrange a series between Siena and Southern Illinois? And they would have to mic the coaches. It would be like that all access. It would just be. One more question. Do you guys remember when Valpo was 7-0 and going into Purdue, and we were talking about how if they win this, you got to start thinking they have not won many since then.
Barely anymore. Barely remember that. Loyola Chicago at Southern Illinois this weekend, though, Dave. I'm sorry, next Wednesday, David. I mean, it may not matter in terms of the final standings, but it could be Loyola's toughest test left in the regular season, at least.
Yeah, and I don't know what Southern Illinois' home record is, but I know it's pretty good. And again, if they win out, I think the committee would at least look at them. We just scrubbed our board, and they're still on our board. I don't think they would take them, but the chances are greater than 0 that they would get in.
Rocco, let's take a look at the Ohio Valley Conference. We already did the Northeast, the top of the show, where we saw a surprising loss by Belmont actually to Tennessee State, and then they struggled to win out Tennessee Tech as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Belmont, really a surprise for them to lose at Tennessee State. I think they've just been living and dying by the three a little too much, which is their MO anyway, but it really cost them. And Murray State's been a little more consistent overall. They are who they are. So yeah, it's going to come down to these two at the end, I'm pretty sure. Jacksonville State, we thought they were a little bit better at the early part of the year. They've been up and down since. So we'll see, but I'm really looking forward to hopefully a classic championship game with Murray State and Belmont in a couple weeks.
In the great state of Indiana.
That's right.
The Ohio Valley Conference has no teams in the state of Ohio. They play a tournament in Indiana where they also have no teams, and it's brought to you by Myrtle Beach.
David, probably the games to circle for this week are Murray State's home games against Jacksonville State and Tennessee Tech, more so than Belmont playing the bottom of the conference, I would think.
Yeah, the only reason, those games have survival board implications. As you know, you essentially need to finish in ninth place. Eastern Kentucky is 1 game out with 4 games left, and Morehead State 2 games out with 4 left. So, in theory, that Belmont game could, I think, knock Morehead State out.
Yeah, but other than that, take a look at those Murray State games. That they could be, even though they're home games, they are 2 of the better teams among the next group down after the top 2, I think, in this conference.
Yeah.
John, over the Patriot League, where Bucknell had a heck of a game Monday night.
Yep, that was a game where they were down 10 against Colgate and actually cut it to 5 at about the 30-second mark. So when they got the possession, they were able to get a basket and a foul. But the problem for Colgate, they committed a flagrant 1 because the player just hacked the Bucknell player, never made a play at the ball. So Bucknell ended up hitting 1 of 2 free throws. They get the ball, and after what looked like a good defensive sequence by Colgate, Bucknell was able to get just 1 more extra pass, and a shot from the corner enabled Bucknell to come back and get the win against Colgate in that one. And with their win tonight, Bucknell is going to be assured a home court throughout the Patriot League playoffs.
Yeah, they got it. So.
Yeah,
that Colgate game was just, Colgate, gosh, they were right there to win it on the road. And, I think they had a little bit of a hangover tonight because they lost at home to Lehigh by 10. So, but I was going to say, they were playing so well in that Bucknell game. It's like, okay, maybe we shouldn't just automatically hand Bucknell the title because that did happen on their home court.
Yeah, but I had John just, relayed or dictated the final minute of the game. With 58 seconds to go, I changed the station because it was a 10-point game and Bucknell was going to lose. So I'm just glad that, you made the announcement on the email that it wasn't over because I did get to see the final 3-point shot.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And Bucknell does host Navy next Wednesday night, who's now tied for second place. But I just don't know that anybody is going to beat this Bucknell team until the NCAA tournament. That's how good I think they're playing, and I think that kind of that miracle win over Colgate might be the kind of the kick of the butt they needed to really just roll the rest of the way here.
Mm-hmm.
David, the SoCon, where East Tennessee State finally went down and really kind of went down bad.
Well, yeah, when East Tennessee State, it's their first loss, and they didn't mess around. They just got clobbered. I think that I don't know what – I knew the final score was less than 20, but they were down by more than that for a large part of it. You just can't help but wonder. Everybody has off nice, but what the hell happened? They just got boat raced.
Part of it was a score to settle from last year in the SoCon championship game where Greensboro, I think, had the top seed, and they were tied with East Tennessee in the standings, but the Buccaneers actually won the conference championship last year.
Yeah.
This Greensboro team, if you look at their last 10 games, their only loss was a double overtime road loss to Chattanooga, which was actually their 3rd game in 6 days. Outside of that, they would be if they could have pulled that out, which was a 2 overtime loss, they'd be on a 10-game winning streak right now. And almost every single one of those wins, besides the OT win over Mercer has been by more than double digits. So they just did it finally against against the best team, but they've been playing well for about a month, really well.
Yeah, they have. I think that was the night we had overtime chaos, wasn't it? I think it was.
Yeah, the Chattanooga one was, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, if you want to talk about another tough stretch here, Greensboro with 3 road games in 7 days coming up here at Citadel, at Mercer, at Wofford.
Yep.
And the Citadel is a game they should win, but a lot of teams have had problems there this year. They're playing better than what they normally do.
They have 4 conference wins. I don't know that I ever remember them having 4 conference wins.
Yeah.
But John, let's go over to the Southland Conference, where I asked you guys last week. Nobody was on board. Are you ready to come with me? Yes, on the Go Colonels bandwagon.
GEAUX, I would agree. So
Thank you.
I had Nichols in my bracket projection for you last week.
Stephen F. Austin, I know there's a bunch of teams here with 3 losses. Stephen F. Austin did win tonight. That's not on the screen there, as did Southeastern Louisiana. But as we record this right now, Rocco, Nichols is up 7 points at halftime over Sam Houston State at home.
Nichols is rolling, and they deserve it. They've been playing very well. They're going to have 4 road games after this out of 5 to finish out Southland play. So if they're going to do it and beat out this logjam right behind them, they're going to have to earn it. They got to play at Central Arkansas on the road. They got to play at Southeast Louisiana on the road. Their last home game is against New Orleans. So there's 3 tough ones right there. So, the Colonels got their work cut out for them, but they came out of nowhere to take the lead and lead the charge most of the conference schedule. So hats off to them.
And keep in mind, there is the incentive to finish in the top 2 in this conference because they still have a ladder among the top 8 teams where 1 and 2 get buys into the semis, 3 and 4 get buys into the second round.
David, over in the SWAC, look at who our leader is there in red.
Again, what an incredible story. And we talked about Savannah State. We are going. I think we were going to work on this next week, or maybe sooner. Should we go ahead and announce it now, Chad? We are going to submit a waiver on Grambling's behalf to try and get them. I think they're going to play in the SWAC tournament, but we are trying to get them eligible for the NCAA tournament.
Well, they really should be here. This is the best season I ever remember for Grambling. It may be their best season ever. And Rocco, they won at Texas Southern by 23 points this week. I mean, where the hell that?
I have no idea. I have no idea. They are unbelievable. I mean, it all started with that Georgia Tech win. Yep. And I think even in the 3 games they've lost, I need to look at their schedule again. They've actually been really close to winning those games. So they're a really competitive team and one of the best turnarounds. You want to talk about one of the best turnarounds this year, you got to give Grambling some serious consideration.
And they've won 10 straight games, which, from my understanding, is their longest winning streak as a Division I program.
Yeah, we've got to get them a waiver, and we will expedite. We will do it.
Yes, I will sign it.
Yeah.
There we go. They are hosting Jackson State, their only game over the course of the next week. They'll be off Monday night. But Rocco, over in the Summit League, how about Mike Dahlman, that South Dakota State team?
Well, he's fun to watch, and it would be a shame if he's not in the tournament. But unfortunately, they're going to have to grind it out in Sioux Falls to earn that automatic bid. Otherwise, he won't be. But he is just amazing. This team is fun to watch. We talked about them a few weeks ago when I mentioned how they've done a great coaching job to get the other players comfortable with their roles, to not really get a lot of shots and just play around him, and it's working beautifully. Also in this league, South Dakota, 22 wins is no small feat. I mean, this South Dakota team had TCU on the ropes in the early part of the year. Unfortunately, didn't win that game. Otherwise, we might still have them on the survival board. But hats off to them too. It's a fun year. I didn't see, but do you know who won the South Dakota Oral Roberts game tonight?
Oh yeah, you could add that in there. South Dakota did win at Oral Roberts by about 18 points. It was so they are 10-2. It's not on the board there. But before that, John, I know you were huge on the way that they beat the entire nation of Peru on Sunday.
Yeah.
Not just South Dakota, but also North Dakota State stepping out of Division I to get a win against Mayville State themselves.
Okay, over in the the upcoming games. First of all, South Dakota, that Oral Roberts game we just mentioned is going final, but I guess we know both the Dakotas have home games coming up this weekend. But David, let's jump over to the Sun Belt Conference, where Georgia State had a very interesting week.
Yeah, and again, they had been playing really well. They're one of these teams that wasn't always. It took them a while to kick it in the gear, but like in the last month or so, they really had. They had Louisiana at home and kind of exposed them a little bit.
But that was 10 wins in a row when they beat Louisiana after they beat Louisiana.
Yeah, it was their 10th straight win, and not only that. I mean, I don't want to say that they exposed Louisiana, although they did a little bit, but they looked really, really good in that game. Played really well, and you had the sense that this team had an element of danger to it. It's a team that we've seen have success in the tournament before. Then they go out and they lose to Louisiana Monroe in a game that just made no sense. I mean, that just doesn't quite compute. How did that happen?
I still can't figure that one out because this Monroe team was not very good at all.
Yeah.
Which also means we have 7 teams that are within a game and a half each other from Georgia Southern down to the aforementioned Monroe.
Yeah.
Yeah, this week coming up, Louisiana will be hosting Texas State and Texas Arlington. Georgia State will be just a single game at Georgia Southern. That's actually going to be a pretty good game there. Probably the second and third, maybe the first and third best team in the conference, depending on how well you rate Louisiana.
Yeah.
But
again,
Rocco,
this is when we're just kind of waiting for the conference tournament. No one really inside the bubble. What small chances Louisiana had, I think, went away with that loss at Georgia State. So,
yeah. Rocco, we start off the show by talking about 3 teams that were undefeated in their conference. Here's one more down here in the WAC, New Mexico State. Continuing to roll, although they got a little bit of test from the Lopes at home, didn't they?
They did, yeah, and the Lopes are improving. Thunder Dan Marley still coaching hard with the Lopes, trying to get them prepared for the WAC tourney. That was a really impressive showing out there in Las Cruces for them to be that close. And in fact, New Mexico State, I think they were down late. There was a 13-point lead at one point for Grand Canyon with at the first media timeout in the second half. So good job by New Mexico State to make sure they got the win, and Grand Canyon showing that they are going to be a tough out in the WAC tournament. So now we've got the big game, the big road swing coming up for New Mexico State, Utah Valley and Seattle. Both games could be potential upset alerts.
It was fortuitous for it was fortuitous for New Mexico State to finally get the test against Grand Canyon because they had won their first 8 games by double digits in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I just look at it here as David. This is the week for New Mexico State. They sweep this. I think it'll be very difficult for the committee to lead them out if they lose in the WAC tournament. They lose one of these games. They better win the WAC tournament.
I would agree with that. Yeah, because I think our stance on New Mexico State was that if they ran the table in the regular season and then avoided a loss to Chicago State, who everybody that has played Chicago State has avoided a loss to Chicago State. So if they are not the first ones, then they would get inside the bubble.
Yeah, I would think if they win this week, they win out the regular season. You're right, beat Chicago State in the quarters. I don't care if you lose in the semis or the championship game. I think you're right at that point.
Yeah,
I think you're right, Chad. And Utah Valley actually was up in the close to quadrant 1, but then they just lost to UMKC, and there went all hopes of that being a quadrant 1 loss. So now they're in the 105 area. It looks like.
Maybe the RPI will go up for losing to Mexico State. Who knows?
It would.
One
but-
more team to discuss, the team of the people. Cal
Yes,
Baptist with a
sir.
huge win. Huge pair of wins this week, knocking off Frank Viola, knocking off Hawaii Hilo in the postponed game from earlier. Now number 20 in the NABCA polls, number 22 in the SIDA polls, second in the Pac West, a game in the loss column behind Dixie State. And David, big
Cruising.
rematch Thursday night. They did lose at Chaminade earlier this year, though.
Right. I mean, it was a very unfair game, but they do have the rematch here. And again, cruising. I think they're the 2 seed in that region. I like their chances of making the Elite Eight. And again, Division II, 8 regions of 8, not 6 or 4 regions of 16, like we have at the.
Right, and they're currently ranked number 2 in the West region. So I would think that they're in good shape there. They, in fact, I think if they beat Chaminade, they will, in fact, clinch at least the 2 seed in the Pac West tournament, which is a 6-team tournament. So you want to get that buy into the semifinals. They'll wrap that up Thursday. And a real tough game here at Fresno State. Is that on Saturday?
Yeah, Fresno State. Again, another Div 1. I mean, they're just playing teams they've played. They played the entire South. Remember that, playing Dixie? I mean, again, and now they're going to Fresno State.
And did they play Peru or just South Dakota played Peru?
I think it was. I don't
Just
think
South
they.
Dakota.
Yeah, it was just South Dakota.
South Dakota played Peru. All right. Let's go ahead and pull the screen down here. Let me run through any other. Oh, you know what? Let me pull it back up again because we got to do top 10 lists, don't we? Let me get that on the screen. All right. It might be coming up. This is, David, go on, just give a little filler while I try to get the top 10 list. So.
Okay, well, the top 10, I mean, again, like the top 10, what we do is that we rank 10 teams. Oh, never mind, it's up. It's New Mexico State. Jesus Christ. We all know who it is.
It could not be. It could be someone else.
It's not someone else.
It's New Mexico State. No surprise, I don't think. A little more equivalent, I think, when we get to number 2, but beyond number 2, which is Middle Tennessee. But number 3 is that Loyola Chicago team.
Jumping over Western Kentucky. Yeah.
With number 4 being that Western Kentucky team. I think, Western Kentucky is still suffering from that loss to San Antonio. It's a bad loss on that profile.
It was a very bad loss on that profile. But it did. One of the things it did not do is that it helped their overall RPI average win.
And the other thing is, just on WKU, Chad, their win over SMU continues to lose value.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So you still have the Purdue win, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And that was in an event that Purdue finished 8th place. So hey, everybody beat Purdue out there. Vermont coming in at number 5, and right behind Vermont, South Dakota State, who we just discussed.
Ooh. That's higher than I had them. Wow.
Over East Tennessee State. Now that East Tennessee State suffered that loss, I really like this South Dakota State team. I think it's a very dangerous team.
Yeah.
Coming in number 8 is Louisiana, who's still in our top 10 despite their loss. And number 9, Montana. I think this is their first appearance in the top 10 all season. So congrats.
Yeah,
to
they would have been
Grizzlies.
my number 11 team. I couldn't get them in there, but I'm glad they're there.
And number 10 is Buffalo. A few other teams that did get some votes, some honorable mention votes at least: Old Dominion, Murray State, South Dakota, UCSB, Charleston, and of course, hashtag Go Colonels. I guess on that note, we can pull the screen down. I've got some final thoughts here. Rocco, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I'm going to touch on that number 5 team, which was the Catamounts of Vermont. So Vermont, David joked earlier that they haven't lost a American East game, I think you said, in 30 years?
I think it's been about 30 years, yes.
Okay, yeah, so you were pretty close. They've got a 32-game winning streak in the America East, and ironically, the last loss was at UMass Lowell. I think they had a couple injuries, and that was back in the 2015-16 season. So with Vermont's win over Albany over the weekend, they are now poised to have 4 very winnable games in a row. They have an 80% chance or higher, according to Ken Palm, to win all 4 of those. So they should it's 5. So they should be in prime position next year to carry a 37-game winning streak into next year's schedule. Maybe it's time to look at a new conference.
Yeah.
New conference.
That's going to feed into something that I got. to suggest here.
Well, let me go to Slika first, and then I'll let you close things off.
Yeah, part of my final thought is going to be inspired by what Rocco had mentioned earlier as far as that College at Charleston team coached by John Kress back in 1997. That was a team that was actually in the top 25 towards the latter half of that year and got a fortuitous 5-12 matchup against Maryland where the Terps, they were a top 10 team about mid to late January but had tailed off in ACC play. So they were able to get the upset that year, but weren't able to get anything beyond that.
David, run your countdown clock.
No, not the countdown clock. No, we're not doing the puppet bunker this year. I've decided we're not doing it.
10 days, 22 hours. Get ready, David. If you want to, I think, Rocco, I think you were.
It's supposed to be the countdown before the championship week video notebook.
Those little ones you get on the planes, something for him.
I'm not going in the puppet bunker.
David, your thoughts?
Okay, well, in looking at the top 10, can we just get that back up on the screen real quick,
Sure.
just for a quick visual? We have some. Is it okay? Here it comes. But when you look at this team, when you look at all these teams, and even the ones receiving votes, you have some really good teams here. And I've just been thinking about this for a while. It's really hard for these schools to get at large bids because the rules are the same, but you have to play the game a little differently. To get the quality wins, you have to get them in November and December and then hope you're able to hold serve throughout conference play. And I realized that, like with the Big 12, or I'm sorry, with the Big 10 and the ACC going to a 20-game conference schedule, there's going to be less opportunities, A, to get big wins, and then B, for everybody in the under-the-radar conferences to play those bye games to get the revenue. So one of the things I was thinking about, and I realized that this is too ambitious and that it won't happen and it would take a huge collective effort. What if the under-the-radar conferences, the 22 of them, banded together and basically finished their conference schedules, and this might mean playing some conference games in December, but finished them a week early than what we're used to, and then you set aside a week of open games, and you could either put teams in groups of 4 or groups of 8 and have a bracketed tournament, and essentially it would guarantee you, if you were in this top 10 range, 3 games against other really good under-the-radar teams that could help your power rankings. Just imagine this in the last week of the season, that Loyola, Chicago, Middle Tennessee, New Mexico State, and Vermont all playing each other in a round robin.
Well, and David, I guess, what I'm kind of thinking about that is, I would even accept, I love the idea. Maybe even we just set aside one weekend where a bunch of these teams played each other and we would decide the matchups. Like, set a weekend of February, let them play on a Saturday, set up the 2 weeks before. I think we call it the Bracket Busters. Wouldn't that be a great name for it too?
Yeah, well, we used to have the Bracket Buster, and I loved it because it gave you I just don't think it was sufficient, at least for getting you enough games. I mean, one just wasn't enough. And I realized at the time, one of the biggest things was it was getting a lot of teams on television that otherwise wouldn't have been. That's no longer an issue because nearly every game's on television now. But the other side of it is that it did give you opportunities to build your resume, and I think a lot of schools did benefit from it.
Yeah, no, I think they did, and you're right. I mean, we're not seeing at-large bids from these conferences, and maybe we would get more if we had a showcase game for them at this time of the year, besides the conference tournament final. Because normally if they need an at-large bid, the conference tournament final that they were showcasing is a game they lost.
Right, yeah.
So that doesn't talk well. But anyhow, on that note, let's go ahead and pull this down here. I do want to thank everyone for joining us. On behalf of David Griggs, Rocco Miller, John Stalika, I'm Chad Sherwood. We'll be back again, I believe, tomorrow night with a bracket rundown show and more podcasts next week. So we'll talk to you again real soon.
Not doing